So hello, my name is Liana Zafran, and I'm here with
Marissa Volk.
Amanda Baret.
with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, and today is August the 9th, 2019. We're here in Elaine, Arkansas, interviewing.
Davis Wilkins.
So, Davis, if you could just spell your name for us.
Davis Wilkins.
And also, when and where were you born?
I was born, my birthday is November 8th, 1956. I was born in Helena, Arkansas.
Could you give us a little bit of info about who your parents were and what they did in this town?
Okay. My mother was a teacher. My mother, she taught elementary school for about 40 years. She died in 1990. My father was quite a bit older than my mother. He died when I was 3 years old. He was a plumber. He had a fourth grade education. He was probably around the first black plumber in business around in the area. But he had a pretty nice business by my understanding at one time, yeah. My mother, she played for, I don't know if you all have ever heard of the song Walking in Memphis, but my mother was the lady they talked about in that song, Muriel. She played in Memphis, Mississippi, different places for different people. But she was a very popular teacher around the area too. Yeah.
Do you happen to remember the lyrics that were about her?
What you say now?
Do you happen to remember the lyrics that were about her?
It said something like, and Muriel played the piano at the Hollywood restaurant. Yeah. That's what it said.
So in addition to being a teacher, your mother was also a musician?
Yes.
Was that?
She played piano. She played at church. She played at, and she had a choir at school. That was during segregation. We had a choir called the J.B. Daly Choir. She did, and we sang on the radio once a month. We went to different functions around town. We sung as kids. We sung in the courthouse during Christmas. Things like that, yeah.
So you were part of the choir?
Yes.
And you mentioned it was during segregation. Did that limit where the
Yes.
choir
Oh, yes.
could and couldn't sing?
There's a lot of segregation. Helena, this whole area was a very segregated area back in those days. I'm 62 years old. That seems like a long time, I'm a pretty old person to you all, but that's not old. That's not a long time ago, really. But Helena was very segregated. I remember black and white water fountains. When you would go to the side of a doctor's office to go in the doctor's office, when most black doctors had their offices were upstairs someplace. But Helena had a very rich black community, very rich. I mean, it was amazing. Black people were doing things. There were black doctors, some of the best black teachers you could see, because black people couldn't get jobs anyplace else. We had people that had gone to Yale, Lincoln University, different places, very prestigious schools. My elementary school principal started National Teachers Day. Maddie White Woodridge, she started National Teachers Day. I have a picture with my mother and father at a celebration before it was even a holiday. Up at this lady's house, Miss Gaddy. There were things that black people were doing that, were amazing around town. Helena at that time and Helena was the gathering place for this county. For people from Elaine, when they came to Helena, they thought they were going to the city and stuff, But Helena had its own black restaurants, black nightclubs, black movie theater even, a black-owned movie theater. Black-owned, everything basically in one part of town was black-owned. Black cab stands, black liquor store, even a black crap house, a couple of them. You know, barber shops, beauty shops, things like that. It was and people were safe, felt safe in a sense, and during my time as a child. It was a different place. It was, in a sense, beautiful. But there was always that hint of, you stay in this place. And I remember a lot of service stations with, you know, places like that with separate water fountains, things like that. Yeah. I was one of the kids that integrated Central High School in the 7th grade, see. That was an experience. I was one of those kids. It was a very racist, hate-filled environment. I was, as a child, my father died when I was 3 years old, y'all, and my mother taught school. And at that time, you know, you didn't need all of this paperwork and stuff like you do now to get your children in school. So I would go to school with my mother and sit in the 1st grade. That's how I started school. And so when I went to the 7th grade, to make a long story short, when I went to the 7th grade, I was like 10 years old. I entered into a world full of hell, of hate. I had a teacher to tell me that it would be a cold day in hell before a nigger passed her class. And I didn't pass that class. I basically had to, there were times that I thought I had to fight to go to the bathroom, things like that. Teachers, I had one teacher that told racial jokes. A man named Mr. Justice. Heck of a name, isn't it? But he called black people niggers and nigresses. School was something else. If I was accused of things, black kids were basically disciplined for things we didn't do during those days, during integration, the early integration. And then after the schools were, after the schools merged, the black and the white schools merged, consolidation. People confuse consolidation with integration. After they came together in 1970, we called it from black kids too, because black kids said that we thought we were white, say, because we went. But it was like, you know, as I got older, I looked at it like, well, you know, the Army has to send the Marines and stuff like that in before they can, you know what I'm saying? And that's kind of how we were. But it was a traumatic experience. It was something. School was something else. Yeah.
Did the segregation or racist attitudes have an effect on your interest in school and education?
Oh, yeah, yeah. As a child, growing up, I was surrounded by a lot of people that were very educated. My best friend's father was a doctor. We used to go with him on home visits. I had friends that their parents were either insurance business, different businesses like that. But like I said, my father died when I was 3. So we kind of struggled. Teachers didn't make a lot of money. That's why my mother played piano. Helena, it affected me because, now I was brought up, and most black kids were brought up to respect their elders, and especially a teacher. So when I went to school, I stayed quiet when I came home about the things that happened at school because I was thinking that I was wrong. You see what I'm saying? I thought that I was doing wrong when in reality I was being treated wrong. And so my grades weren't good. I didn't understand. I had teachers, one teacher had a southern drawl, a real drawl. Instead of saying yes, she said yes, like that. Well, and she taught language arts. This lady recorded the test. She'd give us a group of words, 10 words on paper. I'd go home and study my words. I was always good in spelling. Well, when we would come to school and we would take the test, what I heard wasn't what was given to me, because what she was pronouncing had that southern drawl. See, and I was spelling it phonetically. So I'd get questions wrong. I failed that class. I failed the 7th grade. It tore up my self-esteem. It literally had me feeling like, well, I wasn't smart, I wasn't this. I didn't realize my ability until I went to college. I got out of high school, but I didn't get out with very good grades. And I didn't realize my potential until I went to college, until I went to a black college. I'm gonna be real with you. Until I went to UAPB. It was something, it's something to be, especially in a child, to pump negative stuff in them constantly. And that's what's happened in this community. That's what's happened in this area. And when I look back, and for years I looked back at it, and I had to do a self-evaluation of myself and say, well, I got to get up. I can't let this bother me, say, because of what these people, these hateful people did to me. And about 18 or 20 years ago, I saw this woman that told me about it'd be a cold day in hell before a nigga passed her class. I saw her going, and I just looked her straight in the eye, and I said, Miss Caffey, I thought you were dead, and walked away from her. You know, hate is something else, and hate will consume you. I had to get over that. This community, it's been a beautiful, I had good friends. I have good friends here. I had a friend when I was 7th grade, y'all, that his father was the pastor at the Episcopal Church, a white guy. His name was Keith Leach. We were close buddies. You know, kids can be innocent. So we were good friends. Reverend Leach was a good man to me. He was a nice guy. Well, when we were 8th grade, I remember Keith, his family suddenly moved. I talked to Keith about 8 years ago and found out that they had to move because they were threatened by the white community because his father was for integration. And so the church let him go, so he had to go. Say, a lot of things, these people held on to segregation. They hold on to it. This community is still holding on, say. Fear is dangerous. Yep.
Your friend that you were talking about that had to move,
yeah.
Were your interactions with him before integrating or after, or what were your first interactions with whites?
He lived a couple of blocks from me. We went to school together. We were 7th and 8th grade together. I played in a band. We sat side by side, kind of, you know, both of us played trombone. So we were friends like that. He had a different outlook on life. His father did, his family did. But the community didn't like this white kid walking around with a black kid. We would go, there was a grocery store, I've forgotten, but where we used to go and get hamburgers and french fries, had the best hamburgers and stuff. And he could sit in the back where the people sat. I had to sit at the counter up front, at the bar. Say, I couldn't go and get at a table. So we would both sit at the bar. Say, I've talked to him, I haven't talked to him lately, but it did affect him, say, how his father was treated. You know, people don't understand the power of hate, but hurt people. People that don't know any better and have been taught to separate themselves from other people, they do what they do. You know, like I say, dogs bark, cows moo. So people that hate do what they do. They hate. You know. Yeah.
Do you happen to know his father's name?
What you say?
Do you happen to know his father's name?
Philip Leach, Reverend Leach, at the Episcopal Church in Helena, Arkansas. That's where he was minister. He's dead now. My friend's name was Keith Leach. Yes.
Going back to when you mentioned your self-esteem changed when you went to a black college, can you expand on like providing specific example, like what changed your feelings about yourself, like being a black man? For example, was it just seeing other black students getting education? Was it a black professor?
Well, I had some good teachers. I had my mother had gone to UAPB it was AM&N at that time. My mother went to AM&N. I had a lot of relatives that went to AM&N. And so what I did, I'm going to say this first. When I first got out of high school, I went to Phillips College, a college in Helena, for a year. Did all right. I enjoyed it. Did good in school. Left there and went to ASU. You know the old saying of being at school and not in school? Well, I was at school. I partied my butt off. We'll be truthful with you. I left before I was suspended. And I came back to Helena, went to school, got a degree in architectural drawing, worked at the highway department. It was okay, didn't enjoy sitting at a desk too much. And I wanted to go back to school. I went to UAPB and majored in agricultural economics. Had some teachers, some black teachers, that gave a darn about me. You know, when you didn't do your work, they'd get on your butt. I had one teacher, Dr. Shelton Fitzpatrick. He was a botany teacher. But he would smart man. He's from Helena, as a matter of fact. Dr. Fitzpatrick would say something like, he would walk in the classroom and ask you a question. And he'd say, okay, to explain the question, give me an answer about this. I want you to explain it. Then I want you to explain it. And when I'm finished, I'm going to let my homeboy David straighten it out. And I'd sit there, oh, Lord, I got it. And he did me like that a lot. So it made me get my work. I made an A in that class. And I said, I started enjoying school. School was different. Things were different. I made great grades. You know, this thing, the self-esteem, and when a person tears down your self-esteem, and it's dangerous. People that do bad things, they have no self-esteem, I feel sometimes. You know, you've got to think that you are something, that you have some worth, some value in life, before you can do the things you need to do in life. I enjoyed, but that's basically, you know, what made me feel better. I had good, caring teachers. I felt like when I was in high school, in junior high school, I had teachers that threw information at you, but they didn't care. And most of my teachers were white. It's like after consolidation hit, most black teachers were put to, they were assigned to remedial classes, or the principals were assistant principals, or they went down to junior high school, something like that. They weren't, we had black principals that came from the black schools that had more education than the white principals, but from prestigious colleges and stuff. But they weren't given those jobs. They were given the lesser jobs, you know. That happened all the time. That happened throughout the school district. You know, these people were struggling.
So when the schools consolidated or integrated, did the black schools close, or what happened to those black schools?
Well, it was consolidation. When they consolidated, your black schools became like the black high school became a junior high school. Some of the black elementary schools closed. Even though some were in better shape than the white schools.
Do you remember the names of the schools that closed?
West Side, I think, closed. North End, I think North End, where I went to school, it closed. They didn't immediately close, but gradually they closed. I remember as a child, when I was fourth grade, when freedom of choice came about. The term, I don't know if you all have ever heard of that. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah. Well, freedom of choice was a parent had the choice of sending a child to this school or that school. And in this instance, it was the black school or the white school. I lived in a neighborhood. I was brought up in a neighborhood that was black and white. A judge stayed right down the corner from us. My friend Keith Leach stayed 2 blocks from us. You know, that it was that kind of community. Well, and we all knew each other. We were peaceful with each other, nice. Well, when I was fourth grade, being an innocent child, I was thinking, well, hey, now my friend so-and-so down here will come over here because this is closer. No. See, I didn't know about that hatred thing. People didn't, they just didn't do that. But Helena has always had its issues. I remember being told once, you know, as a young child, I don't know how old I was, but do not do anything to upset Sheriff Hickey. He will kill you. I remember that as a child. And I always, whenever I'd see him, I had a fear of him. Now, you know, that's what I was taught. Yeah.
Just because you mentioned it several times, can you just provide a quick definition on when you say consolidation and integration?
Okay, integration is when the black children were able to go to white schools, or when white children had that opportunity too, but they didn't do it. And you know, there's an old saying that black folks thought that white folks' ice was colder than black folks' ice, but both of them were ice. So a lot of black parents chose for their children to go to white schools, thinking they'd get a better education, that they had better materials available to them, so on and so forth. But that was integration. Consolidation was when they brought the school system, although it was one school system, it was the West Helena school system at that time. but it was still the black schools and the white schools. And consolidation is when they brought them together, see, under the same thing, but it was still the West Helena school system. Now, they basically, before then, there were two distinct school districts. The black school, the West Helena Black School District, the West Helena White School District. Hispanic kids went to the white school, Chinese kids went to the white school, but most of them lived in the black communities. The Chinese stores were in the black communities. See, it was a weird thing. These kids were brought up with black kids, but they went to school over there. See, I don't think there are any Chinese stores. In Helena, when coming up, most of South Helena had Chinese stores. See, that's right. But that's the difference.
Were teachers in your school able to talk about civil rights or slavery?
When I was in school, I think they might have had a paragraph on slavery. See, that's what's wrong with society now. America is not ready to face the truth. The truth hurts. And but the truth will set you free. And see, it's hard to tell a person. We'll give you an example. It's hard to tell a white person that their great-great-grandfather, who was a Confederate soldier, was a damn traitor. You see what I'm saying? I have one of my friends had about 3 or 4 or 5, I don't remember how many Confederate generals in his family. He had a bunch of doggone traitors in his family. Say, but our town still looks up to him. Say, nobody wants to talk about this Elaine massacre thing. Say, that is a no-no in the area. It's being appeased, the things that's going on with it, except this program. But the things in Helena going on with it, it's an opportunity to please some people and to shut it up, just to bring it out here, and we go keep it quiet. We're gonna let y'all tell this little story and say they were sharecroppers and things like that, and we're gonna let it go on like that. And we will never know the truth. But I look at it like this, y'all. I did some thinking on the way here about this and last night and stuff. You can't let stuff get you. You know, all you can do is know what's happened, and you make good and doggone sure it ain't gonna happen again. You know, if your friend kicks you, you can't hold that grudge, but you gotta make good and doggone sure he can go kick you again. That's what it is. See, and my wife and I were looking at a show last night. And I don't generalize all people being mean. I want you all to know, I don't generalize all white people being mean. I really don't. But I heard a guy on this show, on a certain reality show that comes on, y'all might watch it. I'm not gonna name it. It's BB. But this guy got evicted from the house. And they brought up a situation where he was talking about, they brought up a situation where he was confronted by the production about some things he had said about a black girl. He said, let me tell you something. I can't live in regret. I don't regret nothing I've done. Now, that's what this guy said. I don't regret nothing I've done. He said, and he started fumbling, and he said, right and wrong, what is right and wrong? Who's to say what's right and wrong? But I don't regret nothing I've done. That's how some people are. That's how people that hate, that's their situation. See, they don't regret. They don't have a conscience sometimes. Some people don't have a conscience. Some people think it's, but see, I'm a firm believer, you have to pay for this stuff. You have to, there's a time in your life, if not in this life, in a life to come, someplace down the line, you got to pay for this stuff. See, you pay, if you all have done any, you can think of somebody you've mistreated right now 20 years ago, and you can say, dang. See, it's built into our subconscious. It's built in our spirit that we know right from wrong. You might not want to say what's right or what's wrong, but we know right from wrong. It was built in us from the beginning. And these people that commit these atrocities, it hurts them. It hurts so much that they can't say anything about it. They refuse to say anything about it. But see, in order for you to heal, in order for a sore to heal, you got to pull that scalp off and go on and, clean it up and stuff. And people would rather turn their head and say, I don't regret it. I'm just going to turn around. I'm going to just go on from here. Say, and that's what's happening in the world. That's what's happened in this community. Say.
With the 100th anniversary of the Elaine massacre and the memorial being built, do you think that's a start to talking through these issues and telling the truth, or what are your feelings on that?
Tell you what, I've been out of school 45 years, y'all, out of high school. Doesn't y'all wait till you, doesn't seem, it's not a long time. It seems like a long time, y'all. Y'all gonna say, God, when you hit that time, I say, God, seems like yesterday. But when we had our first reunion at 5, our first reunion, I think our 10-year reunion, we had it integrated. We haven't had one since. Now this is 2019. When are we going to get over stuff? You see what I'm saying? When are people going to be able to, people can't heal. You can't heal because you can't talk about stuff. People don't want to remember what's happened in the past. They would rather, our white classmates would rather have their reunions with the private schools. See, Helena, this area still has a system of private schools, y'all. You remember when they were talking about this congressman or senator or something from Mississippi that went to a private school? Well, Helena still has a very active, this part of the state has a very active private school system. Very active. Helena has DeSoto. Our classmates, my former classmates, would rather participate in a reunion with them than with us. Now, what does that tell you? See, if I look at it like this, if you, what's your name?
Liana.
What is it?
Liana.
Liana, what's yours? Amanda? Yes. All right, Liana, if you kick Amanda, and then you don't apologize for it, and you go to her talking about something and saying, well, I did this, but you don't apologize to her, and she goes along, it's like, well, you're kind of complicit with her kicking her because you won't tell her she's wrong. See, and that's what's been happening in our community. That's what's been happening so long. Some people have to be able to step up and say, we as black people have to tell our other black people, our fellow people, you're wrong for your attitude about white people. You're wrong. You can't generalize like that. You can't hate like that. You don't do that. See, Those are things we have to tell people. But, and you know, I've heard other black people say, you know, we black folks are the most forgiving people in the world. But that's all right. See, we should be. People should. But this community it's got to change, y'all. You know, you keep on doing the same, you know, it's gonna die if it stays like it does. Yeah. Yep.
Going back to your mother, I'm wondering, since she was an educator, what you have seen from her as an educator and what you've learned from her.
Well, I learned a lot from my mother. My mother was a very giving person. She helped a lot of kids. My mother bought shoes for kids and stuff. She would literally, you know, and I'm a giving person. I volunteer. I'm retired from Comcast in Memphis. I live in Memphis. But I volunteer at the cancer clinic there. And those are the type of things I learned from my mother, to give. You know, it doesn't hurt to give. It doesn't hurt to help somebody. She was the type of person that, my mother played piano. She could play. I mean, y'all, she could throw down. I'm not kidding you. And she wasn't. Everybody thinks that this area is just blues. No, my mother didn't play the blues. She played a little blues, but my mother she played at church. We were raised Methodist. She played at church and didn't charge the church a penny. My mother spoke a lot at churches. She never charged anybody, never charged the church. Although there were times when my mother would scrape out of her purse $3. You know, we struggled. I learned just that patience to love people from her. You know, my mother was that type of person. She loved people. She was, black and white people loved her. See, but she was a woman that she would stand up. My mother stood up. During segregation even, she stood up. See. My oldest brother, I'm gonna tell you, I forgot to say this, y'all. After integration, after consolidation really, my oldest brother was an elementary school teacher. He spanked a little white girl. The whole town went ballistic. The white community went ballistic. Here this black man is spanking this little white girl, and he put a welt on her. Back in those days, spanking was acceptable, you know. Oh, y'all, the superintendent of schools, and my mother had a good relationship. He, you know, he had a very good, as a matter of fact, the elementary school we went to, the teachers there had a good relationship with the superintendent. Well, and my brother taught at the same school my mother did. My mother was my 4th, 5th, and 6th grade math teacher. My oldest brother was my 4th, 5th, and 6th grade science teacher. I got my butt whipped, y'all. I was the first kid at school for 3 straight years to get my butt whipped in 2 classes. Say, but it was fun going to school. Kids back in those days, it was fun. But he spanked this girl after consolidation, y'all. And what happened was the superintendent came to our house and talked to my brother and my mother, because the white people wanted my brother fired. They wanted him fired, y'all, and it was a big stink, a big stink. Well, the junior college was in Helena. The superintendent came to our house and told my brother and my mother that if my brother would resign, that he had a job at the college, teaching at the junior college. And so my brother already had a master's degree at that time. So he started teaching at the junior college, and he made more money teaching there, but he was one of the first black teachers at the college behind that situation. Y'all, they did, after integration, they basically, y'all, took out corporal punishment in the schools because there were black parents didn't want white teachers whipping their kids, and there were white parents didn't want black, teachers whipping their. It was interesting. It was something. School was different.
You might have already mentioned it, but what was your mother's name and your brother's name?
My mother's name was Muriel Wilkins. My brother was Robert Martin.
Okay. And I had another question and I just forgot.
Going back to the statement when you said the black community is often known as like the most forgiving community, in your opinion, how does that play a role, if you think it plays a role specifically in this community, on why individuals here are not willing to talk about it or even, face the truth of reality of what happened during the massacre?
Well, what happened here in Elaine, y'all, black people were told, I don't know if you all have seen statements, Dr. Olson might have a copy of something, of the letters that were sent around to all Negroes, shut up, be quiet. See, like I said, we were a disciplined, we have been, up until the last generation or two, a very disciplined group of people. Now, we respected our elders. We did what we were told to do at school. We did those things, y'all. The people in Phillips County were told to shut up, don't say anything about this. Go to your work job, don't talk about it, and everything will be okay. And so when these adults back in 1919 and 1920, when they were starting to go back to work and stuff, they were told to shut up. As long as you quiet and shut up, you all right. You a good nigga. Say, just don't say nothing, because if you do, I'm gonna get you get in trouble. So when their children would come up and say, Mama, what happened to so and so? Shut up, boy. Quiet. So people got used to not saying anything. And down throughout the generations, they haven't said anything. And they still think like that. See, some things are coded into people. Just like hatred is coded, that passiveness, that fear not to talk about some things are coded into people. That's why you have situations like a segregated pool here. Because people are too afraid to say something. Say, they're afraid even that if you leave here, if you say too much, you leave here and go down that road, something could happen to you. You think about it. Y'all saw how you came here. It's a lonely road, isn't it? Think about that at night. Think about it. See, I've got friends here that I know up till 15 years ago. Now, you hear about gun control and assault rifles and everything. I got black friends got weapons. And they carry them. They pack them when they ride at night. See, and it's sad to live like that. But see, there have been instances. I believe in this community there's still that a little clan faction, things like that here. But people leave because there's nothing to do. But this is such a quiet area because of that. They have been taught generationally not to say anything about this situation. And see, a lot of people couldn't write A lot of these poor black people years ago couldn't write. You'd be surprised. So oral history is the only way they knew something. So if you can't talk about it, you lose it. So, but white people were writing it down. See? So those people that knew things and didn't talk about it, that didn't write down anything, they died away. The people that wrote things died away, but they still had written records. So you hear about these people being sharecroppers and all of that instead of being landowners. See, history is his story is something else. And it's something. Yeah.
What leads you to believe that there's a Klan faction still here?
Well, I don't know that, but I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt if there is, some kind of white citizens council or something still going on. This area, y'all, at one time, I haven't kept up with it lately, but this area had some of the richest farmland in the country, y'all. You know that, don't you? There were farmers. There was a family here that was one of the largest farmers in the country. Lived here. Now, they made a killing farming. Now, I'm not going to mention names, but they were, I used to live in Texas years ago. One of the family members, somebody in the family, they were flying drugs into the country. And cocaine or something. But the pilot got arrested. The Mexican government held the plane and the pilot for $1 million or something like that. They paid that $1 million. But, I've heard people talk about that when the crack epidemic was really out there. Y'all, I smoked crack for 13 years or two at one time. It was that I did. And when we wanted to find the best crack in the area, guess where we'd come? To Elaine. Out in the country. Strange, isn't it? It's the last place you think you'd find some drugs in it. The good stuff. You know why? Because the river's right over there. But that was years ago when I did that job, by the way, too. See, I'm not doing that stuff. But anyway, this whole community this is something, y'all. This is a different place. It's a different world. But it was a beautiful world at one time. This community, as a child, I used to hunt and fish a lot. And I know you all live in Florida and stuff. You think you got some good fishing and stuff. Hey, right down here, it doesn't look like y'all passed that lake, Old Town Lake. Some of the best fishing you ever want to see. There are places all up and down the river, beautiful fishing places. Just some of the best hunting is down in this area. See, it's all kinds of stuff. But how long are you all here for?
Another night. Yeah, one more.
Okay.
One more day.
But it's an interesting area. It's an interesting area.
I remember my question from before. I wanted to ask about your mother. She sounds really involved in church and in community, and I was wondering Was she or anyone else that your family associated with involved with the civil rights movement or sit-ins or protests?
Yeah.
Do you recall anything that stands out to you?
I remember, y'all as a kid, my mother and I went to Forest City to pick up some campaign literature against Barry Goldwater. Have y'all ever heard? Y'all have heard of Goldwater, haven't you? He ran for president in I think Goldwater ran against Kennedy. I was a little boy, but she told me, you can't, we gotta hide this in the car because we'll get in trouble if the police stop us and see it. Say, we went to Forest City, which is about 50 miles from Helena, to pick this stuff up, this literature. But we would, we were, all of us, back in the days when there were boycotts and stuff, all of us participated in that. All of us. I mean, our whole families did. The communities were pretty, people didn't, my mother was she believed in standing up now. Yes, she did that. There were things that, you had to stand up for. You had to stand up.
How did word spread about the protests and the boycotts?
What you say again now?
How did word spread about the boycotts and the protests?
People had meetings in churches. Yes. And, young people would really show up. And there was a big NAACP presence here. The NAACP was very active in this area, say. And people would go, when they had NAACP meetings, it would be at least 100 people at them. People would show up, yeah. And that was like, hey, there's a meeting this evening. And they talk about things at certain places, yeah. It was that like that, and it would spread by word of mouth, People would picket, have signs, all the whole 9 yards.
What were some of the initiatives that the NAACP did while they were in here, in this community, and are they still active in the community?
I really don't know how active they are now, but they talked about stuff like equality. They talked about issues around the town, about elections, representation, like certain places, some public places that black people didn't have access to, things like that. Stores. There were stores, y'all. And have you all been in Helena yet? Down in Helena? Okay. Well, there were stores down on Cherry Street, which is the main street in Helena, that didn't have signs that said whites only or anything like that, but black people didn't go in them. There were stores that, black people didn't go in. I remember when they had to sit in at the drugstores and stuff like that, at the lunch counters and stuff. I remember all of that. I was a little boy. My brother was one of them in that. My oldest brother was, at least. I remember just a lot of things going on like that. But people weren't afraid to protest. Helena had a big black presence. West Helena was a plantation at one time. And by my understanding, it was built, West Helena was like a company town. They had lumber mills and stuff. And all of this lumber was coming from out here. All this cypress and stuff. There were huge cypress trees out in these woods at one time. Humongous, I mean. Those were cypress trees. You all know what cypress trees look like, I guess. Yeah. But there were humongous cypress trees out in these woods. These were old woods. But yeah, they were very active, NAACP. I don't know how it is now. I don't know at all. But the man, I remember this man, Jack Bryant, being over the NAACP, then Jimmy Wilson, 2 or 3 people being over it. It's just a child, yeah.
When you mentioned traveling to get the election pamphlets with your mom and other travels that you might have done, did you have to worry about which roads you take or going into unfamiliar areas?
Well, not as I remember. We didn't have that problem. But I'll tell you this. I remember when my mother, when we'd go to teachers' meetings in Hot Springs, we stayed in houses. We didn't stay in hotels. Now they'd have the meetings at hotels. I don't know if other black people stayed in the hotels or what. I think they had one hotel in Hot Springs where black people could stay. But we always stayed in a house. And when you travel someplace, usually that's what you do. If you go someplace, you'd stay in a house. Now my mother, we always tried to travel during the day. Yeah, it was traveling, and like I said, you think about it. I remember one time, y'all, I almost got a whipping about throwing out some ice. We had stopped. We had gotten something to drink at this Dairy Queen or something, and I was through with my drink. And back in those days, every car didn't have air conditioning and stuff, and it was hot, and we were riding down the road, and I threw my ice out the window. I got fussed at about that because there was a police kind of far back behind us, and that made my mother nervous. I also remember another instance when we were coming from church. We were coming from practice or something at church one evening, and we got stopped. My mother got stopped in West Helena and she didn't do anything wrong, but it was just too many heads in the car. Say, things like that would happen. Yeah.
What kind of language did the police officers use with you or your mother?
Well, I don't really remember, but I remember in other situations, you would hear situations like boy, girl, but I didn't hear anything real bad, truthfully, but it was just that type of terminology. When I was in, I don't know what grade, I might have been 8th grade or so. I got called a nigger by a man that owned a radio station here in Helena. I was walking out the band room, and he said, "Nigga, get out the way." But I remember that. When I was 7th, 8th grade, I remember opening up my trombone case, and there was a card in it that said, "The Ku Klux Klan is watching you." Yeah. I thought about as much of it as I did about picking up a piece of paper. I didn't even think. I was too young and innocent to even worry about it. Yeah. That's the truth. Mm-hmm.
When that happened, did you think to tell your mom or to tell any of your friends?
No. I didn't even tell her. Like I said, I didn't know. And like I was telling you earlier, we were raised up in such a disciplined family that we thought if an adult told you to do something, you do it. If a teacher told you to do something, you do it. If you got a spanking at school, you go get one at home. That's how we were brought up. So if something happened to you negative at school, I tried my best not to tell at home. And see, because I knew these teachers weren't trying to communicate with black parents. They didn't give a damn, pardon my language, about us. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They really didn't. We were experiment to them. We were something, we were a piece of meat with a heartbeat. That's all. Something that they had to they had to do. Yeah.
I'm wondering what led you to leave Helena, and when you did leave Helena, if there were different types of experiences you had that made you look differently on your experience in Helena.
Well, believe it or not, y'all, when I left, I didn't really want to leave Helena. Because like I've said, Helena it grew to be out of that segregation and stuff, and after integration, black people there were businesses going on here. Black people had a few things. There were a few things going on, you know, and it was a place I would have liked to come back and work in agriculture and stuff like that. But I never did. It wouldn't have worked for me here, because 90% of the agriculture was done by white people, and they weren't accepting of black people doing stuff like that. But when I left Helena, well, what I did like I said, I was at UAPB. I worked one summer. I came home for the summer and worked for Southwestern Bell. And when I did that, I enjoyed it. It was an experience, made a little money, you know. But I got offered a job that following December, right before Christmas. I was in Pine Bluff at UAPB at school, and I got a call. And I called, and it was the lady in Human Resources. She offered me a job in Blytheville, Arkansas, permanent job with the phone company. And you know, this was in 1981, the phone company was paying great money. It was a great job. Weren't many black people doing that in the South. You know, you were kind of free. It wasn't factory work, God. You know, I couldn't stand that kind of crap. It wasn't the typical black work that black people were doing. All most black people were doing back in those days were, you know, truthfully, teaching school, working at a factory, or something like, you know, this was something different. So I accepted. I took a job. I went to Blytheville, Arkansas, which is North Arkansas. It was different. I enjoyed it. That's what made me leave. And I had some experiences, and you know, that's why I left Helena. Say.
What is your vision that you would like to see for this community? Like, what are some of the changes you hope to see that this community will evolve in the future?
Helena needs this. Phillips County, I'm going to say that. Phillips County needs industry. It needs some new ideology. It needs people to come in who it needs, what should I say? It needs jobs. It needs jobs, and it doesn't need the same old factory stuff. It needs something different. It needs, this Phillips County has a biodiesel plant, places like that. It needs something like that, something different. Probably, since Arkansas is getting into the legal marijuana thing, it needs something like that. Hey, you know, I'm a proponent for go weed. You know, I am. We need to look into the future. We need to do something different. We need to do something, and all people need to be But I might be living, I'm saying I say all people need to be involved. But I might be living in some wild world because people have always taken from other people. You know, that's the haves and the have-nots. The haves have always taken from the have. I mean, that's what made the have-nots, you know. But a loving community can change a lot of things. Forgiveness, awareness of others. See, our people do not, our community, well, this country is not aware. You know, we're not that group that are very aware of other people. Y'all's generation has to step up. See, you can't be fooled by what you see. See, because what you see is an illusion. See, but Helena, I don't know, it needs better infrastructure. Helena, West Helena does. It's built kind of out of the way. There's nothing you can do about that. But Helena is starting to redo the, like this memorial even will help. You know, people will come to see things like that. It can be a great history program. This is a very historical place. It has, they had a battle here. You know, there's a church, a black church, Centennial Church, that's very, you know, that has a lot of history behind it. There are different things that can go on. They have a blues festival. Y'all used to have one of the best blues festivals. It's gone down. You know, there are things that can happen for us. Yeah.
Is there anything that stands in the way of that vision and the community?
Racism. That's it. And I'm going to say this too. Apathy. You know, you've been kicked so long that you can be kicked so long that you don't react anymore. You know, you just, hey, whatever goes on, goes on. And that's kind of the attitude a lot of people have. And from black and white people in the community. Whatever goes on, goes on. I'm all right with it, you know, because it's been happening. We did it like this, and we have to get out of this. My people have to get out of this attitude that just because white folks did it, we can do it. See, one of the fears that most white people have of black people is we're going to treat them like they treated us. We've got to get out of it. That's you know, that thing of fear. You've heard the acronym of the saying that fear means false expectations appearing real. And most things you fear don't even happen. See, but those are the things that stand in our way. They are not material things. They're right here. They don't cost nothing. That can change this world. That can change the world.
What advice would you give to young folks who want to enact the vision that you're speaking of?
What advice would I give to what now? Young people about what?
The vision that you're speaking of.
Well, just be vigilant. Be politically active. Treat people like you want to be treated. Be a critical thinker. That's one of the most important things. Don't just conform to what your mom and daddy said. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure your parents have taught you well. I'm sure you're taught well. But now, don't be afraid to ask questions. There are no dumb questions. There are no, you know what I'm saying? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to do something, to change. Change is a good thing. Change is a good thing, y'all. I'm 62, doggone it. I'm thinking about starting. I retired from Comcast. I'm finding me something else to do. I'm on a diet. I'm going to lose me some weight. I've lost 16 pounds already. I'm feeling good, looking good. That's this thing right here talking. You see what I'm saying? You've got to change the way you think. You change your mind, your, pardon my language, will follow. You know what I'm saying? Change your mind and your butt will follow. Am I right?
Since you're talking about change, what is your advice that you can give when we're talking about like the Black community? Because when you look at the older generation and the younger generation, there at times tend to be tension because there's different approaches they would like to take when trying to combat some of these issues. But at the end of the day, both sides can still learn from one another. But it's just like, how do we approach coming together and taking wisdom from both sides?
Well, I'm going to say this to you as a young Black lady. You cannot forget your past. But do you know your past? Do you know what has happened to your people? Do you really know what's happened to your people? I'm not telling you to be mad about it. It's a difference. But I'm talking about you knowing your past, your history. Not the history you've been taught in school. But have you ever taken the time to study, to research things about the history of Black people? That's what I'm saying. You have to know who you are. See, we're not these monsters that some people have said we were. And I'm going to tell you all something, young ladies. I'm not talking about you all. But there are some that have called us monsters, evil, hate. We are not those people. Say, but if you all don't take the time to open your minds and listen and research and check facts, you will believe this stuff. You see what I'm saying? You will start thinking that every one of your friends is a hoochie mama. You see what I'm saying? It's not so. The younger generation is going to have to just learn who they are and just be, don't look at what we've got mad Black parents. They're mad Black people just as mad as white folks are. But you got to think for yourself. Say, you've got to think for yourself. There was a situation in Memphis about a couple of months ago where a young man, we'll give you an example. A young man he went to test drive a car. A young Black man went to test drive this Lexus or something that an older white man was selling. And he was driving the car. The young man, he stopped driving and told him, the owner, to come around and start driving. Well, they were switching places. The Black boy shot the man, didn't kill him, but shot him and drove off and drove into North Memphis. And this happened in Mississippi. Memphis, it's, right between Arkansas. Memphis is right at the edge of Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi. It's like right there. Well, the boy did this crime in Mississippi. He drove into North Memphis. Well, the Mississippi police sent in the marshals, the U.S. Marshals, to get this boy. U.S. Marshals went into North Memphis to get this boy. This boy's selling dope out the car that he's taken from this man. This man trying to sell his car, regardless of what color he is. Well, he happened to be a white man. The boy pulled a gun or something on these marshals. They blew his butt off. Well, the Black community in North Memphis wanted to raise hell about it. And they wanted the people to start acting a fool and doing all that stuff. And people in Memphis, black people said, no, hold it, this boy was wrong. They were trying to say the boy was in college and all of that. Thugs go to college too, just like Klansmen go to college. You see what I'm saying? Neo-Nazis go to college. Say, it doesn't make a difference, but you got to be right or wrong. You got to be right in what you stand up for. That boy was wrong. But our younger generations need to stand up and think for themselves. My mama used to tell me, one thing she used to tell me, she told me this, y'all. And I've heard several other people. I got in trouble one time at school. My mama said, Davis, whose idea was that? I was scared to tell her. I said, it was mine. She said, you better be glad it was your idea. She said, if one thing I want you to know, if you go do something, if you go do something wrong, you make good and doggone sure it's your idea. Don't you follow no other person in your stupid stuff. And see, that's what I'm saying about our children. You all young adults, don't follow nobody into that stupid stuff. Don't follow nobody into this hatred stuff. Say. And you can do it. That's what will change this community, any community you go to. Don't be afraid to talk to people. Don't think that Mexican, Hispanic people are bad. They're gonna take your jobs. I'm sure ain't none of y'all wanna do no roofing. Or do no landscaping. You see what I'm saying? Don't assume that things are gonna happen. Negative things are gonna happen. Always think positive. Think good. Good can come out. See, our people, we have had, and that's all it takes for the world to change. This thing can change. This thing can change. If the truth would have been told about this situation, I want you to think about something, y'all. There's a reason they waited 100 years to start talking about this. Think about it. 50 years ago, they would have found a lot of people who could have told the truth about this. Think about it. But they didn't bother to, did they? Say, y'all, the truth hurts. And you can't maintain a lie if the truth comes out. See, you can't keep up a cover-up if the truth comes out. So we go sit up and let everybody die off, and then we got this written history. We're gonna play that, and that's what happens. Yeah.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share that maybe we
Well,
didn't
I've
touch on?
enjoyed myself, and y'all keep your heads up and reach for the stars, y'all. You're 3 young ladies that have potential. And you know what? I want to tell you all this. You don't know what your limits are, so act like you don't have any. Mm-hmm. Think about that. You can do all you want to do. And don't, you know what? And no just means next opportunity. That's all it is. Y'all can do this thing. When I'm an old man, y'all can be, you know what, you all can be president. You can do whatever you want to do. You all can change the world. That's right. This can be it. Y'all have brothers and sisters and stuff?
Yes.
They can do things. See, it's amazing. It's amazing. Where did you say you're from, young lady?
Oh, Haiti.
Oh, Haiti. A struggling country, isn't it? It's amazing. See, those people have potential. They've been lied on. You think about it. They'd have you, this this administration we're dealing with now will have you thinking that that's a rat hole country, that it's the worst thing in the world. But you know what? The only time you ought to look down on a person is when you're trying to help them up. That's what I'm talking about. We don't need to, even, I don't care what color you are. If you need help, that's what it is. Help a person. Help somebody. It doesn't hurt you, it makes you feel good. It does something to the spirit. Y'all, one of the best things I ever did was volunteering. I left a company that I felt like didn't give a damn about me and started volunteering, and it's the best doggone thing I've ever done in my life. Y'all, I'm telling you. So this is a good thing you all are doing. And keep it up. Your friends might say something about it, you know, and you'll learn something. If y'all weren't doing this, you'd never end up in Phillips County, Arkansas. You wondering what in the world, is this y'all's first time in Arkansas?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, y'all deep down in the Delta. Yeah. Where are you all living? Staying right while you're here, man? In Helena or where?
West Helena.
Oh, it was at the Delta Inn or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Well, I've enjoyed talking to y'all.
You've shared deep wisdom, important perspective, and really unique stories that are very much a gift to us and anyone else who listens to it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your
you.
time.
Okay.
Muriel plays piano every Friday at the Hollywood, and they brought me down to see her, and they asked me if I would do a little number, and I sang with all my might. She said, "Tell me, are you a Christian child?" And I said,